Hey friends, so the diagnosis assessment that I chose was the retelling assessment. And just an overview of this assessment is it does measure comprehension. And what the students have to do in this assessment is they have to listen to a story and then they have to immediately retell the story with basically as many details as they can, and just retell it to the best of their ability. While they're retelling it, you will be going over a score chart and marking things down, which I will go over in a little bit. Now, for this assessment, the developmental level ranges were not specified, but what I would assume is this would probably be most appropriate for beginning, transitional, and intermediate, as you do have to recall a lot of details from the story, and it may be difficult for young readers to remember that many details and be specific. However, you definitely could do this with emergent readers. You may not get a lot of information back, but you could definitely do this for emergent readers as well. And the reason I didn't include advanced, just in my opinion, I feel like advanced readers typically are getting pretty good at retelling stories and comprehending stories. So I didn't think it'd be the best fit for advanced readers, but I'm sure in some cases this could still be a good assessment for advanced readers as well. So I think beginning, transitional, and intermediate is really that sweet spot for this assessment. So some of the benefits of this assessment that really stuck out to me and why I really liked it is it's very simple, it's super quick, and it's very low preparation. So the reason why these are benefits is because this could be a really good assessment to have if you don't have a lot of time to prepare, and maybe you weren't planning for this assessment, but you just saw a student that really was struggling with comprehension and you kind of wanted to see where they were at in a quick way. This would be a good assessment to use because it is something that you can do quickly and you can get the materials fast, and it's you simply just have to read a story and have them retell it. So there's not a lot of pressure, so it is a good one to kind of just have in your assessment toolkit to pull out when you want a quick assessment of a child's comprehension. So that's why I really liked it. I think it's a good one to be aware of so that you have it ready if you were to ever need it. Now, there are disadvantages of this assessment. It relies really heavy on a student's oral expression abilities. So I know personally I struggle a little bit with explaining things and expressing myself. So this might be a difficult one for me, and that's the same for a lot of other students. A lot of other students may not be the best at expressing themselves and being able to explain things the way they are in their head out loud. So it does rely on that oral expression. So for some students, it might be really difficult to retell a story right after without being able to process it and really think about it and organize their thoughts. So that's something to consider. Another disadvantage is there is not really a set way to score this. The text doesn't really give you a set way, and if you research it, there's just a huge variety of ways to score this assessment. So it's not going to be the best for data collection. You're not going to really be able to use it for like a norm reference or to compare it. It probably could be used to measure the student's growth, but like I said, the data collection is just not that great because the way it's scored varies so much, and there's not really a specific way to score it. So it's more, I would say, more like a reference sheet for you and the student to see how they're doing. And yeah, so that is some of the disadvantages, is that it's not very strict on scoring, so it's not the best for data collection. Okay, so the procedures for this assessment, like I said, as one of the benefits, they're pretty simple. So basically, you pick a story to read to the student. As soon as you're done reading the story, you have the student retell the story. And a great way to start this out is to tell the student, retell me the story as if you were telling your friend about it or your siblings. And you basically just tell them to just tell the story as if nobody has ever heard it before. So that's a great way to get them started. Now, as the student retells the story, if you see that they're really struggling, or they're saying like, I don't really remember much at all, I don't know what to say, in that case, you can use these prompts that the texts give you, or come up with your own to have on hand. For a narrative story, it can be things like, how did the story begin? What was the problem? And for informational text, it can be things like, what did the author want us to know about the topic? So you can basically just use these prompts as needed when the student is retelling the story. Now, some students may not need these prompts. They might be just on a roll and they're telling it just fine. So these are optional, but I would suggest, if you are giving this assessment, definitely have these printed out and beside you in case the student needs these prompts. So in addition, the materials you need for this assessment, there's not many at all. You just need to pick a story, a short story. It can be a printout story or a storybook. Then you need to have your score sheet, which I will go over with you in the next slide, and then have some sort of prompt questions ready to go. So you can use the one that the texts give you, or you can come up with your own as well. If you want to follow this given score sheet, there's a lot of different score sheets for the retelling assessment, but if you wanted to follow this score sheet that I'm going to go over, I would suggest using the prompts above, just because it correlates with the score sheet really well if a student's stuck, so that way they can get an accurate score on their score sheet. All right, so like I said in the disadvantages, the scoring is, there's no set way to score it. So you really have to kind of come up on your own with a way to score it, or just research and look for the best way you find to score it. My recommendation for scoring this is to, while the student is reading and you start filling in the sheet, so of course you put their name and the date, do the title of the story, and it's pretty simple. As they read, you basically just check if they included this in their story on their own. Now, if you had to prompt them, then you would check the prompt, because they didn't do it without you using a prompt for them. Now, if they completely don't remember at all some of these details, then you can just leave it blank. Like I said, that's not what the text said to do, but that's just how I would do it. So just leave it blank. So you would check if they got the details unaided, or if they got the details prompt. And then afterwards, you would add your comments, things that you observed, and then the support you think they need after the assessment is completed. The support you wouldn't have to do right away if you didn't want. You could take some time later to go over this again, and then include your support is what I would do. So that is how you fill in the score chart as the student is reading. You do want to do it as they're reading so that you remember that they got everything. So you just check that off as they're reading. Okay, so now go back to scoring. What my recommendation was personally is to see what percentage of the story they were able to retell. Now you could do this, what percentage they were able to retell unaided, or what percentage they were able to tell unaided and prompt collectively. So that's kind of up to you. I would personally do what percentage they were able to do unaided and prompt, just to see what they were able to do independently, and then what they were able to do if they just had a prompt. So that's kind of how I would score it, just to see where they're at, and then be able to see if they've improved from that and were able to do it more independently. Now, the way that you can interpret this, this is my recommendation, is for you to use it as a guide to see what area the student is the strongest in retelling, and what areas fall flat. So see, as on your score chart, like what areas did the student retell very easily and they did not need your help. Maybe it was something that related to their culture, so it stuck out to them and it made sense to them, or if it was a character they really connected to. And then maybe there was areas that they just didn't really remember, and really take time to think of why that is. Why was there some areas that they could retell easily and then some areas they need a prompt? So that's a good way to interpret the data, and you're probably going to want to take some time to really think about this and review it and come up with like an analysis and support that they need. So that's how I would interpret the data. So after you've interpreted it and you analyzed it and everything, and you've gotten all your thoughts organized, then you can use this section to do your suggested support that the student needs. So after giving this assessment, what do you think the student needs to work on with comprehension, with their story retelling? What are they missing? And if they're missing things, what can you do to help them understand certain parts of the story better, to remember them, to comprehend them? Are they not comprehending settings very good because they don't have a lot of experience with other places? So those are things you could go over and see, how can I support them in comprehending a story as a whole. So to end, an instructional idea I had was to turn this assessment into a group work. So you could actually have students get into groups and you could do peer evaluation, and the students could have their own simplified version of a score sheet that's just really simple for students to read, and they can take turns retelling a story they all read, and the students can grade each other and see they could put a little check, like maybe you could list all the characters and they could put a little check if they mentioned each character, or list some of the problems that happened in the story, and then the students could take turns grading each other. So this would be a really great instructional activity to do in your classroom with this assessment, and it hands over the responsibility to the students. So that's all I have, and I think this is a great assessment to learn about and to use in your classroom. And the great thing is it stretches over many different grades and developmental levels.